and welcome to another episode of the Crag Chat Climbing Podcast. Today, my guest is Tyler Podomik. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
So, Tyler, tell me a little bit. We're going to talk about primarily Hell. If you tuned into the last episode of the Crag Chat Climbing Podcast with Joel Brady,
Yes.
If you haven't, you should. And if you did, you'll know all about Hell and what it is. Tyler was Joel's partner this year for Hell. Mm-hmm. But first, before we get into all that, tell me a little bit like how you got started climbing.
Well, first, thank you for having me on the podcast.
You're welcome.
I got into climbing at Ascend Southside August 2019, so this August was 4 years into climbing. And I had just gotten home from like an overseas trip, and my buddy Brandon Hoskin was like, let's go try this thing out. And he always has ideas like that. He's like kind of like he's like, let's go try this, let's go try that. And then we never stick to anything. Well, we stuck to climbing like in a week. We bought a membership. So we were going there 2-3 times a week and just kind of never stopped. He still climbs. We kind of don't climb together. He has a girlfriend now, I have a girlfriend now, so we have like our own partners and stuff, but we still climb together occasionally.
Yeah. So at what point in the process did you start climbing outside? Like, were you kind of more of a boulder bro? I know you do a lot of rope stuff now. I don't know how you got started.
Nice.
Anything about
it? So, we started climbing. Brandon and I started climbing outside 1 year after we got into climbing in general. So like August 2019, I started climbing. August 2020, like right during in the middle of the pandemic. Kind of whenever things were loosening up a little bit is when we first went outside. It was me, Brandon, and my good friend Annette. We met randomly at the gym with her, and then she was kind of nervous and kind of like reluctant to be friends with people during COVID, and like reluctant to just be friends with 2 random guys from the gym. And we're like, come camping with us, but she did it, and we had like the best time ever. We came up with like a group because we were like all new and we were getting pumped all the time. So we called ourselves the lactators because like all the lactic acid in your thing.
Great
So
name.
we had a group. It was the 3 of us. We were the lactators. So
You sound like a breastfeeding mother or something.
yeah, I know, it was really funny. I actually really like that time in my life was great because like that was the first time we went outside. That was like the first time I was like doing a lot of like, I never really did any physical activity before that. I just made art and played video games. So it was like getting outside, going into nature, like with like my really long time friend Brandon and my new friend Annette. So it was really fun. And then we like met up with like other people, like my friend Justin, and then I met Matt and like people like that. Like we got into there a couple months after. Like I think by November we had new members in our crew. It wasn't just the 3 of us. But as far as like sport, I am fully into sport climbing. I struggle very hard to get into like outdoor bouldering. I like find it hard to enjoy sometimes, but also I've been told that I'm not like trying the right stuff or going to the right places, or you got to come outside with me if you want to enjoy it. So I like it. I enjoy it. I just like, if I'm ever outside, I want to sport climb.
Yeah. I like sport climbing outside at the current moment. It could always change, but I like sport climbing outside better, and bouldering inside
Me too.
Yeah.
Like the gyms in here, like all this stuff is like, I love it, but I like think about it, I'm like, I'm gonna get better for rope climbing outside.
Mm-hmm. I'll do both. Like I'll do anything. I don't really care.
Yeah.
I get scared outside with bouldering too, just because like.
I do too. Yep, I get more scared on boulders than I do on ropes.
You seem like you are pretty confident climbing above bolts and stuff. You don't ever really show on the outside that is that a skill that you took to develop on the inside, or you're like, oh wait, no, I'm still just as scared? Or like, what's your perspective on like fear when you're sport climbing outside?
There's definitely a lot of fear in it, but like something we could talk about more in this, like when you ask me questions about like Hell and stuff, like the more confident you get and like your assessment on fear becomes a little different. Like, what am I capable of? What do I know I can hold? So it like becomes like a practical thing. Like, should I do this? Does it seem smart or not? But also, like, even when I started though, like back with Brandon and Annette, I was always like a little bit stronger than the 2 of them, but we were all really like we were still climbing like 5/8 and 9s. And we were having a blast on all of them, but I was mostly putting all the routes up. And because they would just be like, go put them up. I'd be like, okay, sure, ha ha ha. And then so like kind of how a lot of sport climbers do, I was like negligent of the fact of like the dangers. Not all of them, because take your lead tests in the gym and stuff. But like outdoors, like you're negligent of like maybe your foot behind the rope or something, or I don't know, just anything like. So like, or maybe you'll go for a move not realizing you know how far you were above the bolt. And then I had that like the ebb and flow, like where I was like that to start, and then you learn about the fears from like climbing around other people or like climbing with more experienced people, and you're like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. And I was like, oh, I've been doing that for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, maybe I'm scared of a few things now. And then now, like, fast forward 3 years, like I don't get too scared. I get scareder on like when I'm trying really hard routes, which I don't do a ton of, but yeah.
Yeah.
Like limit climbing, I guess. I get kind of like heady on.
Yeah, why is it? I feel like it's not really scary unless you are trying really hard. It's almost like the act of trying really hard like shuts off the part of your brain that kind of tells you like, hey, you're gonna be all right, because you're just like putting all your energy on like what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's like, and you're squeezing so like there's like a higher risk of slipping or falling in an awkward way. Like when you're trying a little bit less, maybe you can control a fall more because you're like, oh, okay. But
or
if you're like limiting, you're like
gripped, you're not completely like you're not at your maximum tension in your muscles. You're just like, well, so if you do slip or something, you can like quick. Whereas like if you're already all the way like
exactly. There's like no give room. You're like, oh, if I'm going, and it's like I don't know what way I'm gonna fall. So
I liked what you said about assessing risk because like I've had a couple people tell me like, oh, you seem like fairly confident climbing above stuff, which is so hilarious to me because on the inside I'm like, and I feel like on the outside I'm like terrified.
Doesn't always feel like that in the inside.
It's because I can't, like, I've never been good, not even just in climbing, like, in general, at, like, assessing risk.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I should be scared.
Well, it's like a good and a bad thing, because then, like, if you don't assess the risk and you just go for it confidently and you get it, it's like, that's awesome. You, like, did a great thing. But then, like, if you don't assess the risk and then you go for it and it ends up bad, then you're like, oh, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But hopefully it just ends up well.
If you get it, everyone's like, oh, that was brave.
Yeah.
If you don't, everyone's like, that was stupid.
Yeah, why'd you do that? Oh, you should be safer next time.
Yeah. Okay, well, talking about, like, maybe a brave/stupid decision, tell me about...
Mine?
Yeah. Tell me about the process of Joel Brady asking you to be his Horseshoe Hell partner. How did that all come about?
Well, I met Joel like a while ago, like indirectly. He actually messaged me. He's a very joking type of person. He's very sarcastic, and he kind of like, pulls your leg and all that stuff, and like really kind of messes with you, but in like really good taste and is like a friendly person. So like one of the first times I met him, we were just talking at Point Breeze, and then I think we ended up at the Kilter board together, and I knew kind of like of his history of like sending harder routes at the New, and recently the Seneca thing he did. And we were just kiltering together, and we weren't really talking, and then we like went separate ways just because it was like a casual climbing day. And then I got a message at like 1 o'clock in the morning on my Instagram from Joel, and it was like, hey, I'm gonna need you to teach me how to, or not teach me, or show me how you keep the tension on this problem in the kilter board, how you keep your tension in your body. And if you don't teach me, I'm gonna have to break your legs. And I was like, who is this guy?
That was his first message to you?
Yeah, well, I think I may have asked him about a route previously on Instagram at South Not All in the New River Gorge, but that was like his first message to me. I mean, I had maybe been asking him questions before.
Right.
That, I was like, what?
That's
I was like,
so
showed
on brand.
Tara. I was like, what is this? Like, this is so funny.
That's so on brand because, at least of what I know of him, because I messaged him asking like, hey, I know you've done hell before, how is it? And his first message was, congrats, you're going to suffer a lot.
Nice. That's
like,
fantastic.
I was like, okay.
Yeah, I like.
But then followed by good advice, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because like then we started climbing a little bit together, and like, it's funny, like he may joke like that, but like most of the time it doesn't feel like. Most of the time he's like giving advice or like helping you out or like talking through things or. Yeah, it's like it's been a great experience since then. But then since like saying I would be his partner, he asked me to go down to like run beta on some of the routes at the Horseshoe Canyon in like, I don't know, July or something. And I was kind of busy with like some of the work that I do, and I was like, no. So he was like, because Andrew had got bit, right? I know that was in the last podcast, but yeah, he got bit by a snake. They were going to do it again, but he couldn't do it anymore because he got bit by the snake. And then when Joel asked me, he didn't really ask me to be his partner. I like kind of pushed in a little bit, but he was asking me, but not really so much. He was asking me more like, will you come and run beta with me in Horseshoe Canyon before the actual competition? And I was like, I can't really do that. I was like, but if you're asking me to run these betas with you, does this mean you're asking me to be your partner? Because I had been wanting to do it for a while, like since I heard about it, with Annette's current boyfriend now, James, who you met. He's done it before, and I've been like, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. And he was like, no, I don't want to again. It's not that fun. And then what was funny is, so when Joel asked me out, I was like, are you asking me? And he's like, maybe you'll be my partner, probably. And then like I think like 3 days, a week later or something, he was like, hey, you're gonna be my partner at Horseshoe Hell. And he's like, but it's only for the 12-hour. And I was like, oh, that sucks. I was like, I wanted to do the 24. I was like, I'll do the 12 with you because that's still going to be more time I've ever climbed before in my life. But I was like, I want to do the 24. And he's like, let me talk to my other partner, because he had 2 partners doing the Hell to start out, doing the 50-hour to start out. And I was like, okay. So, and then we agreed to the 24, and I was like, sweet. Like, I wanted it to happen, and somehow it happened, and then it ended up with Joel, and I was like, oh gosh. So here we go. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. I think that I always say, like, you should take every opportunity to ask for things that you want.
Yeah.
Like, the worst people can say is no.
That's true. Yeah.
So good job. You had this cool experience because you weren't afraid to.
I kind of like pushed a little. I think he wanted me to be his partner, but I was like, come on, let's do it. I was like, let's do it. And he was like, oh yeah, sure. I was kind of gonna ask you anyway. And I was like,
you have his mannerisms down very
nice.
Good.
Nice.
From the little bit.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Okay. So tell me, because I feel like I know y'all, and I'm still a little bit confused. Mm-hmm. What was the initial agreed arrangement for partners for the 50-hour?
Right. Okay. So. Obviously, Rob and Voss, per your podcast, Voss and Rob. Rob and, wait, what is it? Anyway, Voss and
Bob and Ross.
Bob and Ross.
Bob and Ross, baby.
It's initially them. Okay, so they're locked in as partners. And then.
For the full 50.
For the full 50. And then it was supposed to be me and Joel, or Joel and I, for starting at the 12-hour, going through the night, and then I'm leaving him once the 24-hour starts. Mark Vabulous and David were a whole nother set of partners that were starting in the 12, and they were continuing through the night. And then David was stopping like I was, and Mark and Joel were now going to be partners, continuing through the 50. That ended up changing because Mark had like some issues with his trench foot, and was having some issues like just with his feet in general. So he didn't even go through the night. David and Mark both just stopped at the 12, and then I ended up going with Joel through the night as I was planned, and then continued on with him into the 50 shortly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
For however long we lasted.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense to me, because I was like, what is going on?
It was confusing, yeah. So
there's
just
a lot of people.
Yeah, it was like 2 sets of partners, and then one was continuing with each other, and 2 were bowing out. Yeah.
And then at some point, and like we can get into it more, but at some point I have to say one of the funniest things that happened in the whole thing for me is when Jimmy ran down the hill, took a bunch of constipation medicine essentially, right?
Yep, Imodium.
Ran back up. And it was like, oh no, never mind, man, you're not climbing.
Yeah, there's 2 things that happened, and one was what you did, which I hope we could talk about in this podcast, but because that needs to be highlighted, what you did with your partner.
Oh,
and then also James doing that. Those were 2 things that I saw during Horseshoe Hell, which made me realize what type of competition it is. It's such like when you're in it, and you're like selfless towards other people. It's like whatever you need at this moment. And Joel kind of needed a partner at that moment, and Jimmy was like, I'm on it.
He
ran all the way down and was like, diarrhea medicine, And then by the time he got back up, Joel was like, I'm out, like not to his fault, like it was just how it was going, and Jimmy wasn't mad or anything, but he was like, oh, like that's
He's
so
like,
funny.
I just can't share for a week, but thank you.
Yeah, I know. That was really awesome to see, like his, like, because he's done it before, Jimmy, but it was like funny to see his commitment and like, it's just cool to watch people like personalities, you know, like you're totally not in it. You're not doing something and then you're like, oh, I'll go into this willingly, something that's kind of going to suck a little bit.
Yeah.
You know.
So, suck a little bit. The training leading up to it.
Yeah.
How was that? Was it difficult? Did Joel say like do A, B, C, and D? What was it like?
Yeah, he kind of said do A, B, C, and D a little bit, like kind of loosely. We stuck to a couple things pretty intensely. We stuck to we stuck to 100 pull-ups a day. So like in increments of like, I was doing them in five increments at a time, sometimes in one session or sometimes broken up into two, like 50 in the morning or 50 at the gym at night. A lot of times I would just do sets of 5 at the end of my session at the gym. But we would do them every day. And for the first 3 days, those were really hard. And then they sort of get a little bit better, but you're still only doing them sets of 5. I think after like 4 or 5 weeks of doing them straight, 100 a day, then I could start doing like some in sets of 10, which was
That's
nice.
cool.
I was like, that's some growth.
Yeah.
But that was pretty hard because then climbing like the next day, like you're pulling and your lats are like already sore, but your body feels okay. So it didn't suck, but that was like definitely a part I think I'm gonna keep going forward because it wasn't like too bad to fit in. It was only like 30 minutes, 40 minutes or something like that. And then something else we did was, this is something I really enjoyed, was running these really fast laps at Point Breeze, where like we would stay clipped in, like he would lower, we'd stay clipped in or tied in, and you'd start pulling the rope from his end, it would come up through the wall, and by the time the rope's coming down, you know, we'd already be climbing again. We would just keep going these like cycle laps over and over again. You know, he'd do a 15-minute portion, I'd do a 15-minute portion. So just like a ton of endurance laps like that. And then other than that, I mean, we did some shoulder workouts, like some what do they call it?
Shrugs.
Scapula shrugs.
There you
Yes. And those are cool. I think those helped a lot. A lot of the shoulder strength was really important for health. Because I don't know if you probably could tell, like even some of the more moderate routes are really bouldery and like shouldery there. And he was kind of explaining that to me, that your shoulders and your big pulling muscles are going to be kind of like tired from all the climbing, like that style at Hell. So those are like the three things we kind of stuck to. And then everything else was like, I got my eating right. I stopped smoking cigarettes for like 3 months, which seemed to really help. And then I did a lot of running, which I know you run and you like running. Well, maybe you don't like it, but you do it a lot.
I hate running. Love it. Yeah.
I never ran before ever. I would do I think I've done 2 run clubs with Tara ever. And I was like, this is like kind of horrible, you know, and I didn't never wanted to do it. But when this happened, he was like, cardio is an important thing. And so I started very dramatically, which is like how sometimes I like to do stuff. I started with 6 miles.
Wow.
And I was like, that's bad. And then I never ran 6 miles again for the whole training program.
I was going to say, honestly, it's a good thing you didn't, because that's a quick way to get hurt.
Yeah, I know.
If you've never ran before.
I was like, somebody told me that after, and I was like, oh, that's good, I didn't. Yeah. Like, it was just like, oh, I have to do this. And then I went really intense with it, and I was like, let's relax.
Yeah, running's like in my experience, it's kind of like climbing, right? It's just a really addictive, easy thing to try and push yourself too much in.
Oh yeah.
They generally, like a rule of thumb, I just heard this somewhere, so, you know, take this with a grain of salt, people.
Yeah.
But you should never try to increase your mileage, especially at the beginning, like more than 10% each week. But the thing is if you're only running 1 mile, like, it takes a long time to get to 2 miles at 10%. Like, you can run 1.1. 1 point, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's a rule of thumb, but like, yeah.
I definitely keep that in mind if I go forward, like, because Tara, we did some running together, Matt and I did some running together. We also started doing some ice baths. I also will say the ice baths during this, that's when I started this. It was like a week into this training where I was like really climbing a ton. Sometimes I was doing 2-a-days where I'd go at 6 a.m. with Joel and I'd go 7 p.m. with Tara. And the ice baths, I was never sore, ever. And then we would run after the ice bath or before it, so that was really helpful too. So like running with people and like slowly going up the miles. I think we did do like 2 miles, then maybe 3, you know, and like work up to it. But
I know Sarah's like been raving about the ice bath. It's enough to make me want to try it once. The consistency of it makes me so like, it's so cool.
It was actually easy to stick with for like 3 weeks. And it's actually, it's harder to get in it now than it was for like the first 3 weeks. It's like, I don't really know why. I know it benefited me. I know I wasn't sore, but like, You know, it's hard to explain. Like I like go to do it now, and I'll be like, I want to do this less now than when I first started like 3 weeks ago.
Well, I'm glad it had benefits.
You should come try it sometime. We have one at Tara's house.
I will. Yeah. That's funny. I think one of the reasons that I wanted to talk a little bit about your training before is, well, one, I was just genuinely interested. Like, okay, what does it look like? But two, like, it's just such a contrast to what Jed and I did. Mm-hmm. So what Jed and I did is we just need to climb a lot. Yeah. Like, so we would do your Point Breeze, like, laps. Yeah. But at the beginning, we weren't even, like, trying to really do the rope quickly or anything like that. Right. We were just trying to, like, and I felt like we were so fairly casual about it. Mm-hmm. We'd do 2-hour sessions and just try to focus. But then when I talked to Joel, like, a couple weeks before Hell, he was explaining all the, like, this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, oh. Yeah. And so then we got, like, a little bit more serious about it. But it was really helpful to, talk to him.
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't know, like, I had no idea either. So, like, I was pretty anxious, like, when I first agreed and we started training together. I had no idea, like, he's, like, running around, and I'm, like, having to keep up, and I'm, like, I don't know, like, I can't move the gree this fast. I like, didn't, and I was, like, is this how fast we're moving? And he's, like, oh, yeah, this is what we're doing, like, and I was, like, oh,
he called it frenetic. He said it was a frenetic pace. I was, like, whoa, like that, yeah.
Exactly, and I was, like,
You're, like, what did I sign up for?
Yeah, at that moment, I was, like, oh, like, sometimes I'm bad with quickness, unless, like, it takes me a long time to, like, learn the muscle memory. Because my brain can just get in the way. I'll just fumble or something. And I was kind of doing it the same way. I was just casually climbing and, like, sticking to that stuff. And he was like, oh, no, we got to do this. And then we got to get good at pulling rope. And I'm like, what are you?
You're like, pulling rope.
He's, like, sending me these videos of, like, himself, like, pulling these friction rope in his ceiling in his garage. And I'm like, he's like, this is what you got to do. He's like, you got to get these muscles ready to go because they're going to cramp up when you pull that rope. And I'm like, this is nuts. It ended up not being that, like, as intense as he planned it, but it was nicer that he prepped it more intense than it was.
That's funny. So how did you feel? I talked to him before the event. I know that it's maybe a little bit harder, like, you've probably reflected on the event and you're kind of in that mindset of processing it. Sure. But try your best. Go back to before the event and tell me, did you feel confident? Did you feel nervous? Like, how did you feel before the event?
Yeah, I guess I felt nervous. But, like, when someone like Joel, like, with he's so experienced. Like, I'm 4 years into climbing, he's 30 years into climbing, and he's established routes, he's put up hard routes. So someone with that experience, when they ask you to be their partner, it's like kind of like an honor, because you get to, it's like going to climbing school, kind of, in like this like indirect way. And so I felt nervous because I was like, I wanted to do a good job. Like, his partner, Andrew, is an incredible climber. He's always doing first ascents. He's always establishing. He just wrote a book. Like, he's experienced. He knows what he's doing. They've both done Hell 5 times together. And being Joel's first new Horseshoe Hell partner, he's never done it with anyone else. I was nervous in that way. I was a little bit like, just sort of something that I kind of deal with sometimes, where like a lack of confidence of like what I could do or like what I might have been capable of. Because like I wanted to do really well naturally, but I was like, oh, him and Andrew do so well. Voss and Rob, they're the best ever. I was like, so walking into, there's like a little bit of nervousness, a little bit of like a small lack of confidence. But then again, on the same hand, like he kind of chose me to be his partner. So I was like, I must be, like, I know I have a little something to bring to the table. I was like, so I just have to believe in that. And he sent me a text the one day, because we were actually like, he's pretty open about like talking about this stuff, which is good for me because I'm like that too, like about like feelings about climbing and how I was feeling all about that stuff. And I was like kind of doing some self-doubt in text, and he was like, believe in yourself, Tyler. I do. Like, this is gonna go well for you. You'll do fine. And I've thought about that message for a while because like that seemed, I like those little validation things. They work with me. Like, they work mentally for me,
I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
The simplest texts that friends have sent to me have stuck with me for years.
Yeah,
so.
And it's like he was trying, but he wasn't really like trying. But I was like, oh, that kind of worked.
If you're out there and you're listening, send your friends nice texts.
Yeah, sometimes even if you don't think they need it, they need it sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, okay. So, okay, we're gonna cut this part out.
Okay.
But yeah, you're doing good.
Nice.
Water, all this stuff.
Nice. You want
so
some?
I'm gonna explain like my thought process to you. So I would like for the podcast for you just to be like how'd the first 12 hours go? You know, like how like because I wasn't there, right?
Okay. The
But,
first 12 hours.
Like the first 12
yeah.
hours, right?
Right.
But for the video, I'd like to potentially take like different sound clips and
Okay.
like talk about memorable like think of it in a video format. Like what would you want to know in like a minute to 2 minutes? You know what I mean? About the first 12 hours. So we can kind of do it more in like a generalized, like I'll ask you, okay, how was the first 12 hours? And you can kind of do it more in general. And
Okay.
then we'll just like the second time, like kind of go more specific, if that makes sense. Like you can like kind of summarize what you just said.
Yeah, sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Yeah,
and then
so,
I'll take whatever.
So the first one you want me to like say to whatever and just
yeah,
describe
like
it?
more like whatever you would say
And that'll
naturally.
be like for this or both will be, and then you'll
Yeah.
like you'll be like okay, and then you ask it again, and I'll just like
Yeah.
give the spark note,
highlight.
the spark
yeah,
notes
the spark
on it.
note, yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know what I'm going to use from this, so if I don't use something, it's not because I'm like, that was shit.
Yeah, sure.
It's
No,
just
yeah.
like, I had 7 hours of footage. I'm at an hour 09.
Damn. Yeah.
So, okay.
That's crazy.
So,
Wow. Okay.
all right, so for the first 12 hours of hell,
Mm-hmm.
Jed and I were climbing, so I have no idea, like, really what happened. Explain, like, what the first 12 hours was like. Like, what routes were you doing? What was happening?
Okay, so we started out in, like we left the pavilion, we ran up, and we started out in the corridor in the North 40. I think we started out on a climb called Love Slave, which is like an 11C. Or we started out actually on some 8s up in the corridor, 8, 8. I think we may have done a 10, and maybe we did the 11 Horny Goatweed, and then we went to Love Slave, jumped right over to the 13A Beluga. We both sent that, so we all sent everything. 13A was kind of a big deal because I ran bait on it, sent it once before it, sent it during the comp, so Joel and I both did it. We were kind of riding high on that. We did the 212Bs right next to Love Slave, and then I fell on the 11C to the left of McLevinett, left of the 12B. I fell twice on that, actually. And then I ended up coming back like 5 hours later and getting that specific climb, which I was pretty psyched about. Then we moved along to like right around the corner, closer to like the circus wall. And we kind of moved through that area. Joel attempted some 13s there that he worked pretty well a couple days before, found the bait on, got pretty familiar with it, and just didn't send him in the comp. We moved along, kept doing some climbs, went over circus wall. And then after sending some stuff at circus wall, our plan was to come back down towards like, if you're familiar with the map, it's like down towards the west side. And we were going to actually leave the sanctioned area of the competition for the 12-hour because we weren't doing the 12-hour. He was going for the 50. And once we made it down to Titanic, I think it was around hour 5 or 6 or 4 or something like that, Titanic boulder, that's when Joel started cramping. So he talked about his cramping. So when he cramped there, we were still in the sanctioned area for the 12-hour competition. And we were kind of like looking at the east side from there. And we were supposed to eventually go over there by like 1 o'clock. And I think it was past 1 o'clock. But our next goal was like Titanic boulder, Prophecy Wall, and then head over to the east side and spend the time there. And we were just staring at it while he was cramping. And it was so sunny over there. It was already so hot. So we called an audible. And we waited for his kind of cramps to go away we finished the whole Titanic area, and we waited for his cramps to go away on like 8s and 9s and 10s and stuff. And then we just like went back up to the North 40 and went all the way down to the end of it to the Land Beyond. And we just ticked everything from the Land Beyond to finish the 12-hour. We ticked everything from the Land Beyond all the way down to like, maybe like the kindergarten boulder, which is like halfway, about maybe 30% or 40% through the North 40. And that actually left us in the 12-hour competition, which we weren't planning to be. So then we ended up getting second in the 12-hour competition because we ended up staying in the area where the sanctioned climbs were. We never like left the area and did climbs out of it. And so we got a decent score. We only did things one pitch, which we were surprised by doing just one pitch on each, because everyone does 2 pitches.
Right.
That we got in second. So that was basically the 12. And then what was the best part about, this is the best part that we loved because Voss and Rob had this plan that we were following. It was like, go over the east side at this time, and all this stuff. Ours was different because we can't climb as hard as them, and we're not as efficient, but we were still trying to follow that. And when we called the audible, we were separate from them, and we were like, let's try and win the 12. Like, we'll get back on their plan later. Let's just forget them and try to win this 12. And then we were like joking about it, like there's no chance. And then we ended up coming second, like I said. But we go back to the pavilion after the 12, and Voss and Rob are there, and we're like, we never went to the east side, ha ha ha. And they're like, oh, we didn't either. And it was like really funny to hear because we were like, oh, like they're probably over there in the sun, like getting cooked, like, and then they never went over there.
So did they get first place in the 12?
No, actually, because they did a lot of stuff in the unsanctioned area, still on the west side.
Gotcha.
But like, they actually was funny is they only had, I think Joel and I both had about 80 routes at the end of 12, one pitch each, and Voss and Rob, we were like, how many do you guys have? And they were like, oh, I think 30 apiece. Like, it was pretty funny because they like are known for like hitting like 300 routes, like, you know, like is their average and stuff like that, like 250 and 200. And they were like, oh, we're at 30. But it was like the 30 hardest routes in the canyon, which was insane.
Like 30,
like 14A, 13 pluses, 13 minuses. It was just like, I love that moment though where we were like, we didn't go to the east side either, ha ha ha. Like that's awesome, good decision.
You guys both were like, it's like the Spider-Man meme where everyone's like pointing
Yeah, we're like, we did the
other.
same thing, this is awesome. And then like, we all went to the east side right as it was dark and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Like after the 12, so.
So you actually did a really good job of being quite concise with that. So
Oh,
I think we might be okay.
Okay, yeah, if you want to do it again,
yeah.
I can like.
And I don't know, I don't know what I'm gonna do with it, but
Okay, yeah,
that was great.
If you want it again or if you don't,
That was perfect.
Yeah, I was like trying to think of like being long and
Yeah.
concise.
Yeah, that was perfect. So
Nice.
so out of that first 12 hours, you did 80 routes.
Yes.
Ballpark, or at that point did you know?
I think I did. We knew. I think I did 70. We did
You
78.
did 80.
I did. We did 78. Actually, Joel did 80. I thought I did 2 more than him, but we found out, and when we counted, and I ended up doing 2 less than him. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I met you at the hot dog pavilion.
Oh yeah.
When Joel said Tyler got one more route than
Oh
me.
yeah, I know. I still wish that was the truth.
Okay, so from my perspective, this is what happened next. I was tired from the 12, and I
Notably so. Yeah.
was like,
definitely.
I really want to follow these guys out, but if I don't get some sleep, I am going to be dead. Which, as we'll talk about later, was a good decision.
It felt very weird going out after everyone was like drinking and having hot dogs. We were like, this is weird continuing back out, you know, because we were the only ones. So I don't knock you for not going out because you were tired and stuff. We were like, what are we doing? You know, like we should go to bed right now.
So I walked to my car and I saw just off in the distance, just lights bobbing up and down. And I watched for about 5 minutes and it was just like,
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll get up at like, so Tara, I don't know if she told you this, but Tara and I had a plan to get up at 4 a.m. To come out and join you all.
Nice.
And there's no surface in the canyon. I got up at 4 a.m. I get all my camera gear, I get my stuff on, I start walking, and I realize I have absolutely no clue where I'm going. Because I climbed in the North 40 all day.
Nice.
So I'm walking.
It's very confusing to get around there.
So I'm walking up the main road, and I'm like, I can still kind of see your guys' lights off in the distance, which was the frustrating part because I'm like, they're right there.
Yeah.
I go on Mountain Project, and Mountain Project says, I was just going to any Crag. Follow the ranch trail to the zip line.
There's no way you can see that in the dark.
And I literally just like turned around, turned my headlamp off, and went back to bed till I then met up with you guys at the start of the
Nice.
24.
I applaud you. That's probably what I would have done, honestly. If I was just like, I'm gonna go trek out and find this by myself, I'd be like, no way.
So when I went to bed, I think it was around 5. I took a long time to wander around. I don't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I went back to bed at around 5, and my thought process was like, by the time I get out there, it's gonna take me probably a couple hours to figure out where I'm going. Then it would take me like back. By the time I come back, it'll be the start of the 24, and then I'll get back, You guys will be going out again.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So anyways,
Yeah.
so I met
Smart
you.
decision.
Yeah, so I met you at the start of the 24th. But tell me about what I missed out on.
Yeah, the nighttime was like the most memorable part. Like it was probably the most memorable time I've ever had in climbing. Like it was like altogether these 7 or 8 days that I was out there before the comp, during the comp, and like a day after was like it was probably like the best week of my life. It's like it stands up there with like a few other experiences I can think of that are really important, and especially highlighting like this nighttime. We left you at the 12-hour, and we all went out together, and like I said, it felt weird. We were like, no one else is. When the 24 is going on, you're at least like other people are climbing. Like we were the only 4 like just walking out into the night. Like me, Joel, Rob, and Voss, and we went all the way over to the corner of the east side. Really popular climb Joel and I started on was Orange Crush, the really tall one. Mm-hmm. And when we get there, Vasya, I'll just start highlighting the narrative as we go. When we get there, this is where I realized, like, because I've seen Vasya climb a little bit during, like, before in the prep, but not really, you know. And he was on Super Soul Shore Shot, which is a really hard 12, like 12 plus or minus. Really beta intensive, and it's like known to be a hard 12. And when I walk up, because they were a little bit ahead of Joel and I, when we walk up, he's on it and he's in the crux and he's like talking to us and he's like forgetting his movements and he like climbs up like 3 moves in the crux, does it wrong, down climbs the crux again and is like hanging out and talking to us, and then climbs the crux again. It's like, oh, I did it wrong again. And then like he's like, Joel, what's your beta? And like Joel sprays him down with beta, and he like climbs it wrong a 3rd time. And then like from these horrible holds that he's not supposed to be on, or maybe you just had him backwards, I don't know. He just dynos for the ledge and is like, oh, whatever, I'll just do it that way. And it was like, to start the night like that, I was like, this is insane. I was like, he's so strong. And it was just like, it just goes back to that experience of like being around like climbers who are so much better than me and so much like more experienced. He's been climbing for probably, I don't know, like 20, 30 years. Rob has been climbing for 30 years, I'm sure. I was just like, that moment was like, oh, wow. Like, that was like nothing. You know, he could have walked up and down that all day.
Did he do it in climbing shoes?
Oh, yeah, he did that one in climbing shoes. Yeah, that was a thin one, yeah. That was pretty thin footholds. And then we watched Rob do it. He crushed it. And then Joel and I were doing Orange Crush. And then whenever they left that, we kind of followed them down towards this area, which had like an 11D, an 11A. Joel and I both kind of ran both of those right after Rob and Voss. So basically the whole night it was just like, Rob and Voss would go to an area and start ticking some climbs, and we would show up like halfway through. And then like as they would be finishing, Joel and I would just start, and like right before we finished, they would leave and go to the next area. And it just kept like, we just kept connecting with them through like that through the whole night. But that became like our lifeblood, and Rob and Voss's lifeblood as well, because they were climbing so hard all day. And when you're out there in the middle of the night, if it's just you and your partner, it becomes kind of like desolate and tiring. Just having 2 sets of partners, like a team, like 4 people, was the biggest deal ever. So being around each other was like motivating and inspiring and stuff. So yeah, we go through like some 11s, some 11Ds. We go to Tool Buttress, which is right in the Middle East. We're probably about 2 o'clock in the morning now. And Rob and Vasya are working these 2 12s. I had worked a few 12s, but I hadn't worked these ones before the comp. And I ended up, that was one of the most memorable climbs. It was called Bum Fight. I got Bum Fight. I sent it right after like Voss and Rob did. Joel went up, got it. We went over through the next area, which was MB Pride. MB's a 13A, Pride is 12B. Joel and I didn't do 12B, but all 4 of us, Joel and I, did the 13A. Joel and I were probably 120 pitches in. So that was the cycle, or maybe like 90 pitches in actually, like 90 pitches in. And so the cycle was pretty high on that. After that, we went into this other little corridor. There was 4 12As there. We only did 1 of them and left. Joel and I did. Rob and Voss, I think, did all 4 of them, I think. Penny Cigarette, Slee Stack, Jimmy Hoffa, Atlantis. We did 1 penny cigarette and then we left. And then they went to the goat cave in the middle of the night. And at this point, we lost our support of like James and Nat and Tara and stuff. They all went to bed. So now Rob and Voss are in the goat cave by themselves, which is a horrible place to be in the middle of the night. It smells horrible, super hard, over 112 days with no skin. Not the place you want to be. So Joel and I avoided the goat cave. We went across, walked all the way this crazy path through the whole canyon, and popped out right at the kindergarten border where we wanted to be. We hung out for a while. Like, did they record?
It didn't record the part where you hang out.
The hang out at the kindergarten
yeah,
border.
so like,
and all that stuff. Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So we, after leaving Penny's cigarette, we cut across the canyon, and we end up right at the kindergarten border, and it's like probably 3-ish o'clock, maybe 3 or 4, and we end up getting into like. I had to go get the rope somewhere, and Joel was like setting some stuff up and eating some snacks. And when I came back, like Joel was just kind of dancing to music, and we just like hung out at the kindergarten for like 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes, and then we did the rest of the climbs. But like we were kind of like bonking out a little bit, but we were more so just like having a good time, like talking about like just surviving the 50 instead of like doing excellent in it. We were like, maybe we just take it a little bit slow and do some stuff like that. So we hung out for a while and didn't do much, which is not really what you do in hell. We were like, whatever. And then we left the kindergarten border and went over to some other climbs in the North 40 where we finished off from earlier. And we continued on from there. And then Robin Voss left the goat cave, came over and met us. And then they were like, we're going to go do some climbs in the kindergarten border. We'll catch you in like an hour. And they came back in an hour and they were like, we didn't do anything at the kindergarten border. We just hung out. And we were like, go figure, because we did the exact same stuff. We did the same stuff at the east side. We did the same stuff at the kindergarten border. And we were like, oh, they're probably going to go crush all the 12s down at the kindergarten border, go do all this other stuff. And they're like, nope, we just sat around. We didn't do much. And yeah, like, it did make them human to me at that moment. We're like, oh, they did so many hard routes. They were kind of in the same headspace as Joel and I. It kind of like brings them back down to earth a little bit with how good they are. So that was pretty sweet. The second on that, we were like, we did the same stuff. Yeah. And then we finished off. That's basically the end of the 12-hour. We finished off the 12. Or sorry, not the 12-hour. That's basically the end of that unsanctioned through the nighttime after the 12-hour pre-24 competition started. So we finished that off from the North 40 and went down, and we joined the whole like group of people starting the 24-hour.
And that's when I met you guys.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And you told me that you were planning to continue on.
Yep.
Because at that point, you didn't think you were gonna.
No, I didn't know. I actually wasn't planning on continuing at that point, but I knew Mark wasn't coming back out. But I knew he was belaying. He wasn't coming back out to climb. But like Joel, so it's really this is really funny. Rob tells me this story in a way that I didn't know it happened. Kind of like how you said I was forgetting some things of conversations that we had. I went over to Rob and Voss and was like, hey, during the start of the 24-hour, we were joking, we were like, oh, we've been warming up for the last 24 hours, you know. And during the start of the 24-hour, when it's all happening in the ceremony, I would go over to Rob and Voss and I'm like, hey, I don't think I'm going to do 50. I think I'm just going to call it and let Mark play you guys and it'll be 3 of you guys. This is the way I perceive it. And then they're like, oh, what? Come on. You got to do it. Like, stick with us. Like, it's the 4 of us. Like, we'll go through it together. Like, it's absolutely fine. I'm like, I did my time. And then I'm like, after a little bit of convincing from them, so I thought, and then I was like, okay, I'll do it. I'll continue on with you guys. Well, Rob, like, after the competition, I was like talking about that. I was like, thanks for like encouraging me to stick through it. And Rob was like, we didn't encourage you at all. And he was like, you basically just used us as a soundboard to convince yourself. We didn't even say anything. And I was like, because he was like, you were, what apparently I said was, I was like, I don't think I'm going to do it. Do you guys think I should do it? Maybe I will. All right, I will. And like Rob was like, we were like just nodding our heads the whole time. And then you said you did it, and we were like, sick. And then we like fist bumped and stuff. And I was like, oh, I thought they were convincing me. But in my mind, he's like, in your mind, you were just telling yourself you were going to do it, and you told it to us for outwardly rather than keeping it in your head.
I can hear you doing that. Like I wasn't even there for it, and I can straight up
Yeah, it was so funny. I was like, oh, thanks for. I was like, it was funny to hear because I did not think that I did that at all. I was like, oh, they convinced me. And then we after the
So you went into the cabin.
Yes, the cabin. Yeah. And we go into the cabin. It was me, Joel, Rob, Voss, James, Annette, David, and Mark.
And I was sitting outside.
Tara. Yeah.
Like, what's happening in the cabin?
Yep. And Tara has this photo. It's pretty iconic in my eyes because it's just like me. I'm super gluing tape to my fingertips because they're bleeding at this point. Joel was also doing the same thing. Vasi is like looking at his trench foot in this photo where his foot's coming apart.
It's not funny.
Yeah, it's funny. Rob is like literally falling asleep on the couch completely. And we're like trying to keep him awake up. He's just nodding off. And like Terry just took this photo of the whole group, and it's like a moment that I definitely will never forget. And then we're like, all right, we're sitting in here too long. It's been like 30 minutes. Let's head back out now. It's probably hour 27 at that point. We're like, let's head back out and keep on climbing. And we had a plan to kind of stay together, but Rob and Voss continued up at the North 40 where we stopped climbing at the beginning of the 24. They went right back up to where we stopped and tried to continue on some of the bottom. It's like the 7s, 8s, and 9s. Actually, the ones that Joel and I already did at the very end of the 12 hour before the pavilion time. So Rob and Voss are over there now. And Joel and I went over the prophecy wall, and Joel sends this 12C at prophecy wall, which is absolutely insane to send at that hour. I think it was 27 or 28 hours. I tried it, I failed, but for Joel to like get that at that hour, he was like, that was like one of his biggest like moments of the comp was like, because if you ask him, what he usually says is he falls on jugs, like he'll do crimpy 12Ds hour 24, like 140 pitches in, but if you put him on any jugs at hour 24 on like pitch 120, he'll fall off them at any moment. Well, it was funny because like it was a crimpy climb that ended on jugs, like super pumpy, and he got through it. And so it was like pretty anti-style for him. The psych was really high on that.
Yeah, and I was there for that.
Yeah.
And you were pretty loopy at that point.
Yeah.
You were like trying to get data from people, and you kept just like pointing at things and being like, boom.
Yeah.
Which is pretty funny.
Which I do not remember at all.
Yeah. Do you remember telling me about the Sendios? You held up a bag of Oreos, and you're like, you know what these are? And I was like, what? And you're like, they're Sendios.
I don't really remember that much, but it doesn't surprise me because that's a common thing to say in our climbing friends.
Tara and I were just looking at each other, we're like, oh boy.
I was losing it a little bit. I felt like, if you would have asked me how I was doing at that moment,
I did ask you how you were doing.
My answer's like, great, I'm doing great.
I did ask you how you're doing as you're walking up the hill, and you're like, well, your voice gets quieter when you're feeling pretty good. You said, I really truly am. I really truly am.
Nice. That's how I talk all the time.
So like no matter
I'm truly am feeling so good, Courtney.
That's kind of what it sounds like. Even the stuff that doesn't get in like the bigger video I'm making. My plan is to release this podcast after the video to kind of be like, hey, if you want to hear a more in-depth story from rookie Tyler, I'll share the like longer, because it was like 5 minutes of you just walking up the hill, just like talking in the calmest voice, like ASMR.
I was trying to stay like pretty, like I remember that moment, and I remember you like recording me while we're talking, and I was trying to stay like pretty, not like too high or too low. Like I was trying to be even keeled because I was like, like in reality, you don't want to go back out, but going back out is kind of fun. It's like you keep pushing and pushing and pushing this limit, and you get closer and closer to this limit, and so you're trying not to be too crazy. Like if you're running up there like you're probably losing control. So that's probably me like trying to maintain control over like this slipping grip that was like happening.
I also asked you, I was like, sorry for making you answer questions while you're like very tired. You're like, you know what, Courtney? Like, sorry, that's literally how you're supposed to. You know what, Courtney? It is truly very helpful.
It was. I remember it being helpful because like I was using my brain in something else. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. That's one of the things I do remember.
It is truly very helpful.
But I don't remember you mentioning like me saying boom on the route, or like pointing at holds, or like having that conversation, or like me telling Joel to like to say the beta slowly. Or something like that. Like, I don't remember any of that.
You said if you could slowly pace, but
Yeah.
okay. So let's talk about the end. You send a bunch of a few more harder,
Yeah,
moderate,
him and I,
large routes.
we went over and got another 12A.
Yeah.
We moved past all that, and then we go looking for Boss.
And then you go look for Boss and Rob at the North 40.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about meeting up with them. What happened when you met up with them?
So we were losing our psyche after sending some of the hard routes, and I had this feeling that Boss and Rob, like, we needed to be near each other all night to get through the night, so I was like, they probably need to be near us too. We should be near them now, our psyche's getting low. We're an hour 28 or so now. So we go over to North 40, and they're walking kind of almost out of the North 40 looking for us, which is great. And we meet up with them, and Tara again has this iconic photo of like the moment we meet each other again after we're like doing well, but we're not doing the greatest, you know? And Rob at that moment when we meet up, we're like, we're looking for you guys, and Rob's like, yeah, we're looking for you. He's like, I'm done, I'm quitting. And we're like, oh shit, like, so it's the first one out, you know? After putting in like an intense, crazy effort, he finally felt like it started to become like unsafe for him either to belay or to climb even because he was getting super tired. His skin was absolutely wrecked from sending multiple 13 pluses and minuses, plus a 14A, plus 30 or 40 12A, B, C, D, like they were on it. So him bowing out at that time was, you know, no weak feet. It was extremely impressive to have made it fun. Also really brave of him to like walk up to the four of us and be like, I'm the first one done, you know, like it's hard to do that. So he was out, and then it was Mark, who was on kind of belay duty, and then me, Joel, and Basia. And then this gets into when I started to belay Basia. And that was, I could tell this story 100 times. We started out normal, where it was just pitch for pitch for pitch with me, him, and Joel. And we were just kind of running through certain climbs. And I'm like circling back through, checking on Rob, and he's like sitting there, like almost sleeping on the rock, drinking a beer, and we're still going behind the other rock. And we get to this point in the corridor where there's like a stack of 11s, 11 pluses, really hard ones, really bouldery, and then two 12Bs. Vasia, I'm on belay with him, and it's probably hour 30, hour 29. And he runs up one route, and when that happened, he didn't stop climbing for like the next 8 minutes. It took him about 8 minutes to finish this whole section, and it went 11C, 12B, 11C, all right next to each other. He didn't do this corner 12B because he fell off it. Came down, did another 10, 11A or B, did another 11B, and then did another 11B in a span of literally 8 minutes with his approach shoes on. With like...
And I was there for it.
with gloves taped onto his hands, which the gloves didn't have fingers, and then where the gloves stopped, he taped tape all around the skin of his fingers, so he had mittens of coverage on. So on all of these routes, he was completely speed climbing. Like Tara said, he looked like an orangutan when he was climbing, and that is so accurate because, like I mentioned before, like there's certain things you learn whenever you get into climbing. Like you learn about cruxes and how they can slow you down. You learn about climbing shoes and why they're necessary on small holes. You learn about like just little things that just take up time. And none of that was impeding him. He was in approach shoes, he had massive gloves on, no skin contact with any rock. He was just crushing through cruxes like as if they were 5.7s. Like it was so impressive. It was so fast that like it looked like you took a regular video of him and you sped it up like 5 times or 3 times, and like the speed at which, like, you said you had video on it, and I can't wait to see the video because I was like, at that moment, like I belayed him through all of those. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like
He just cruised it. It was insane.
8 or 9 climbs in 8 minutes. It was so fast. He took his helmet off, and there was like an ALS ice bucket just dripping off down his face. Like so much water came out of his helmet. And he was like, "Oh, I didn't even know I didn't take off my helmet. Like I didn't know I left it on." Like it was like he was still so endearing. Like even though he's going crazy.
Yeah.
And then so he gets off his last climb, and this is when I quit because I was like, my brain was very broken from that. Like I was like enthusiastically belaying. Like, you guys, come on, whatever. Not that he needed that, but at that moment, he came down the last climb and he takes his carabiner off and looks at me. He's like, "All right, you next." And I was like, I just kind of froze for a minute, walked over to get my shoes, and in the middle of walking over to get my shoes, I was like, I turned around, and I was like, I'm done. I was like, I'm calling it. Like, I wish I would have continued, but like, I was at that moment, I like watched him do that, and I was like, he needed to get that out for himself. But I was like, okay, him and Joel can just do this. Like, I realized at that moment, I was like, I could continue, but why would I do this? Like, what I watched, I was like, that can be the finality of that, and that will be so memorable.
Yeah.
I was very happy to see it. Like, I think we were talking about it a lot, like him and I, like later on, and I was like, this is the moment. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And I was like, no, dude, like. What I witnessed, I like cherished it so much that I was like, I'm done. I was like, I'm not doing anything after this.
It was like the fireworks at the end of a thing.
It was my grand finale, even though it wasn't mine. I watched somebody explode up and eat rounds.
And you're like, well, I mean, everyone's packing up their lawn chairs and going home. Guess I will too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So in between that time and the time that Baji actually like did his last route, so. Rob was done, you were done, Joel decided shortly after that he was done.
Yep.
I watched Vasya go through those climbs like a maniac. It was insane. From my perspective, he comes down, and you were there, but I don't think you were like really paying much attention because, you know, you just, whatever. You were
I was in and out all the whole time,
Vasya speeds through this last 12.
Oh yeah, a minute and 26 seconds up a 60, 70 foot 12A.
In approaches, all the stuff you just mentioned.
Yep.
Speeds through it, and I'm like, okay, that's insane. Comes down, and like, it's very clear in my head that like this isn't the end. Like in my head, I'm like, this isn't the end. He's just still going on.
Yeah, he's just not a 12A. Yeah.
He just like looks around and goes, do we have any wine left? And everyone's like, what? And he's like, yeah, I think I want some wine. And just like, and that was the end.
Yeah.
That was the end. And I don't have it on camera because it was so unexpected. I was like, not even. Yeah, it was just spectacular. All right, so after this entire experience, I caught you right after like the moment that you were like, I'm bowing out, and we can go over that, and you can see like, oh wow, okay, this is what I thought. Right now, after like a couple weeks after Hell, what were your takeaways?
I took away a lot. So climbing with all those experienced people that are much stronger than me, I took away a lot of confidence because I wasn't, not that I like kept up and kept their speed, but I was climbing with them. I was going route for route with them throughout the whole night. I was climbing just as hard as they were. So I took a ton of confidence, a ton of like belief in myself, a lot of gratitude for them like taking me to the ring, being very open, welcoming me into their Hell community, like show me beta, their stashing beta, their rope beta, everything, like the whole beta of how to like go about this, and like just generally in climbing, like I feel like more confident. And even I just came back from the new, like everything was more confident, more powerful. I'm like believing in myself a lot more, so that's a big takeaway. And also that Hell is really fun, and it's a very good community. I feel like I said a lot of gratitude. That's like the direct takeaways. Like there's tangents and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. I like even you coming back from the new. I could already tell that it was like it changed you.
Oh yeah, I climbed so hard. I had my hardest new climbing day ever. I was like, oh wow, here it goes.
Yeah. Okay. And then describe just briefly. Can you describe each of the members of the 50 from your perspective? Like if you had to give a little bio for each of them.
So Joel is Mr. Banjo Man, pit professor, dad. But he's very he jokes with you a lot, he messes with you a lot, he pulls your chain a lot. But he's very helpful, very kind, very smart. If you get to know him, you understand his ways and like some of his language, how he means certain things. Vasya is, as he said, he's a very bad Russian. Because he doesn't like vodka, he likes wine. It's like kind of like he's very joking like that. Very welcoming. Just met him on the Hell trip, and I already feel pretty close to him just because of like the bonding experience you have. Definitely like feel honored to kind of be around. I mean, he climbs 15A like at least. It's cool cool to have somebody that, that good and that experienced, like, want to kind of be partners with me and, like, talk me through certain things like that. So I'm really psyched on that. Bossy is, like, very funny. He's a very funny, endearing character. He has a lot of jokes. And super analytical and smart. Came up with his 81-page spreadsheet on how to deal with hell, minute by minute, hour by hour, where to be when at this minute, where to stash this rope, like how long this hike would take, how long this climb will take. Dialed it down, 81 pages of spreadsheet, like incredibly smart. And then Rob is really funny. He's kind of a hypochondriac. Joel got bit by a bat. Rob didn't touch him. He got close to him, maybe touched him, and went to the hospital with Joel. He's like, should I get a rabies shot too? Like, very funny, very kind person. Also a good joking personality. It's like everyone's fun to make fun of a little bit. And Rob, Joel, and Ross are all kind of fun to make fun of. And everyone's in a good sport about it. So, yeah, we turned Rob into a meme after the whole bat scenario. But yeah, super strong climber, really smart. Everyone, like, Rob and Ross, like, I already knew Joel, but I didn't know them. And they, like, were very welcoming, very open to, like, showing me stuff. So just very, like, kind people, funny, and good to joke around with.
All right, so that's the hell experience from Tyler Podomik's eyes.
Yes.
If you have any questions, don't ask me. Ask Tyler.
Don't ask me any questions. No.
All right, now let's to round everything out. Let's just talk about. Tell me about what this upcoming year in climbing looks like for you now that you've had this experience. You said you're feeling strong, and then tell me about your climbing goals that you have.
So yeah, I feel like I'm in the best shape I've ever been. I mean, I'm climbing 4 years. It's been a steady progress, but I feel going to the new today, yesterday, I feel different. So I want to kind of take advantage of that, and I have a lot of goals. Vasya we were drinking wine on the porch, and he's like, "You could climb 14 feet, 2 tries," and I'm like, "No, I can't." But hopefully, I could try to climb like something in the range of like 13 plus or 14 minus in like the next year or two. That's my goal. I'm sure they would yell at me and say, "You need to try to climb it sooner," but that's why they're good friends. But I'm like, let's be realistic here. But that's definitely a goal that I have, is to like try to climb into that grade. As far as the end of this year goes specifically, I have a kind of like a mega hell-ish, not too mega, but kind of like a mega hellish project that I want to try and embark on in Upper Meadows, where I climb a lot of specific routes in however much time it takes, from like the beginning of the Upper Meadow to the end of Upper Meadow. And so I'm like going down there and trying all the routes I haven't tried. To prep for Hell, a couple months before, James and I went down to Third Buttress and we did 17 pitches each in a day, which they're all like, they average like 100 feet, so they're very different from Hell. They take a long time. That was kind of a small piece of like the idea that I'm kind of trying to put together for myself for when I go after it. So I think like sometime in the winter I'm going to try and do it, which is just like connecting First Buttress down to Third Buttress, but predominantly most of Third Buttress in one day, which is like 40 some climbs. There's 113A, there's a couple 12Bs, and 12B and stuff. So,
Yeah. Well, that's sick. Oh, we're leaving in just a sec.
that's okay, no rush.
Yeah.
I was just checking to see that door was closed.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's the end of the season goal. I have like some goals to take, like a couple more 13s I have on the list that I've touched but haven't really worked. But yeah, that's about it. Try to get down and do as much as I can at the end of the year and keep climbing. Like I'm really excited. Like this Hell got me really excited for like. I've been such a casual climber, like trying, like I've been like I try really hard because I just love climbing, and that puts me in the gym at longer hours, and that makes me want to train longer. There's never been like a goal, like I need to train harder for this, or I need to train harder because I think I could do this. And Hell kind of being around Joel, Rob, and Ross, they're in my ear, like, you need to do this, you can do this in 3 tries, you can do this, you can do that, and I'm like, oh, okay. Like I'm like naively believing them because I'm like, oh sure, they're like, yeah, I guess you're right, I'll go try it. Because like the whole entire Hell experience, they were like, you can do that, and I'm like, oh. They're like, yeah, go ahead, do it. And then I would do it, and I'd be like, oh, I guess I could do that. So now when they're like telling me certain things about like routes I should try or grades I should go for or stuff like that, I'm like, okay, well I guess I I should take this condition that I've trained for hell to get into, you know, kind of like capitalize on that through the winter, keep trying routes and set some higher goals for next season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, it has me really excited.
That's awesome.
I feel like like today was like the first day I've climbed outside since hell, and really the first day I climbed like at the new since like that day I went down like mid training with James, and I felt like a whole different person, which was like I was talking to Tara, I was like, I feel so different. Like I did like 3 of my hardest pitches I've ever done at the new in one day yesterday, and I was like, I want to keep going, and I felt like I had a lot left in the tank, so it hasn't been a suck for sure.
That's really cool.
Feeling grateful for those guys.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. And for going through your whole hell experience. And I want to be there when you do this rampage.
In Upper Meadow,
Let's do it.
I won't rampage like Boston. I'll try.
Yeah, tape up your hands. But thank you everyone for listening to this episode. And if you haven't seen the hell video already, you should check it out. See this guy in action. See him get a little bit loopier than
a little bit delirious, but I was fine.